you would start to get scarred, I think, in the races. Like you would do a race, it would just blow apart. It'd go so ballistically fast at one point. And then the next year you'd do that race in 2012, same team, would be like, oh, I remember this part. Like this place is crazy. So they're kind of figuring out and learning the races, trying to learn as fast as possible. The first year was a massive learning curve.
Welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. I'm Matthew Piaro, editor of the magazine and your host. You just heard from Ryan Anderson. He was describing what it was like for him when he got a taste of road cycling in Europe roughly 9 years ago. Recently, Anderson announced his retirement from pro cycling. He's been at it since 2008. In that time, he might not have risen to the same heights as, say, his frequent teammate Svein Tuft or some of his contemporaries such as David Veilleux or Hugo Uhl. But Anderson is the last of a certain generation of pro road cyclists. He's been on all the influential Canadian road outfits of the past 15 years, including Symmetrics, SpiderTech, and Rally Cycling. Yeah, that's right. I called Rally a Canadian team. Technically, it's registered in Minneapolis, but there's always so many Canadians on that team, both on the racing side and on the management side. So many that I'll call it Canadian when it suits my purposes. Anderson got his start daydreaming his way through mountain bike races in his home province of Alberta. Then he moved to banging bars on the road. Later, he worked as hard as he could to get to Europe to race against the sport's best. He's seen a lot during the past 13 years. Teams and races have come and gone. As Anderson takes his leave from racing, he looks back at people and events that shaped him and that continue to shape road cycling today. Ryan Anderson, recently you announced that you would be retiring from professional cycling. That makes you the last rider from the influential Symmetrics team to depart from pro cycling. I'm glossing over the fact that Jeff Kabush was on Symmetrics, but from a road racing angle, you are the last rider from that influential Canadian team of the early 2000s who, up until recently, was racing. Could you remind us why that team was so significant?
For many reasons, it was a very significant team. And for me, it was the team that I wanted to get onto. So it was like, that was my goal. That was what I was chasing. It was pretty established at that time. And I came in the last year of the team, but that was like the thing I chased. And then after, making it there, chasing the next goal. So it was a very big step in my career.
Some of your teammates included Svein Tuft and Christian Meyer. Do you think that team's influence has petered out since it folded in 2008?
I don't think it's petered out so much. Like, I think it's just changed. There was, then I think for the younger riders like Hugo, then it was SpiderTech was kind of like his Symmetrics, I would say. It's just changed a bit. But the group of guys that was at Symmetrics was special, very special and unique.
Let's go to your pre-Symmetrics days. As a kid from Spruce Grove, Alberta, you were into mountain biking. How did you come to that sport?
So mountain biking, I think it was probably a bit of luck. My parents just got me into biking. We did a trip to BC when I was like 9. I was always like riding around and like, a 5-speed on the local, like, kind of like sidewalk, whatever the bike paths in Spruce Grove, and kind of hitting the little dirt piles and things like that. But my first exposure to like mountain biking was when I was 9, and then kind of like it was pretty cool. I was like, I'd like to try this. And then the next year, age 10, I was racing mountain bikes. We were doing all the Alberta Cups, and then it kind of progressed to doing some of the BC stuff and then Canada Cups. And yeah, mountain biking was my thing all through till junior.
How then did you make the switch to road, or what brought you from the dirt to the pavement?
I think at that time it was maybe there was just more, because mountain biking has gone in waves too. I think cross country mountain biking has definitely gone in waves of teams and popularity. Maybe And at that time, road cycling was taking off in the United States. That was during Armstrong's big run. So I think that for a lot of reasons in mountain biking, the courses were really long at the time too. So I would get out there and I'd just be like smelling the daisies. I wasn't staying focused on the task at hand, and I was trying road racing. And I was in Alberta specifically, there was not that many big mountains or anything in the races that I was doing. So I was always in the group, and I had a decent sprint. So I was always kind of competitive and always in the mix all day long. Whereas mountain biking, I was either kind of in the front, or if I wasn't, I was just, like I said, I would be out there just daydreaming. And so I think there was just that whole thing kind of led me to more to like enjoying the road. And I did the Abitibi with the Canadian national team my last year junior, like mountain bike pedals. I was there with Eric Bully and David Vailloux, Mark Kinnon, a bunch of good guys. And I think that I had a lot of fun in that race. And that was, I think, probably one of the big switches too for me to switch into pursuing road.
Let's jump ahead to 2009. Symmetrics had folded the year before. You and two teammates, Zach Bell and Jacob Erker, landed on Kelly Benefit Strategies, the team that would eventually turn into your current outfit, Rally Cycling. What was the team like back in 2009?
It was different, but sort of the same as it is now. The same sort of characters. Jonas would be the head performance manager of the team, and he was then, and he still is. And I think that he found people that worked well together, got along, similar personalities. So from that aspect, there's a lot of similar characters in the team that there is now versus then. Obviously different people, but I don't know. We did some similar things. Like the first year we used to go to this Winter Park, Colorado for the winter training camp and first get together. And my first year back into rally in 2018, we did the exact same camp, and it was similar, just different faces. But then there was still like the owner of the team, Charles, there. And I'm not sure if Jake made that trip, but Jonas was there. So there's a lot of similar people have worked in the organization over the years. But it was obviously a lot smaller then. It was quite a small team then, and now it's grown to be it's continuing to grow, but it's getting pretty big.
Earlier, you mentioned Spider Tech. In 2011, you joined that other significant Canadian road team from the past 15 years. There's been Symmetrics and then Spider Tech. It meant you are now on a pro-continental team. How was that change for you to go from, say, a Division 3 team to a Division 2 team?
You know, I was kind of figuring it all out as I went, and then that was naturally the next progression was like, well, okay, I need to go race in Europe. I need to try to do in Europe, and Spider Tech came along, and that opportunity came along. It was exciting. You know, we had it was mostly Canadians, mostly guys that I'd grown up racing with or knew who they all were, and then Steve was running the show. Getting over in Europe was a pretty big shock. And I guess in that year also, so Swain came back. That was in the first year that I was there, 2011. So like so many familiar faces. Will and I were back there together. And Will and I spent a lot of time together on Symmetrics. That year we vagabonded around to a few local races in the Pacific Northwest here. And so anyways, just going into, next big phase of being in Europe. And that was my first time I'd spent that much time over there. I think kind of went over January, February, probably stayed till California, came back for a bit, then went back. So it was a big adjustment. And then on top of that, we were getting nice races, and it was obviously influenced by Steve. A lot of his success was in Belgium. So we started in Belgium, which I think is a very difficult place to learn, but it's hard and it's good for you. It was funny. Like Steve would be, he was so good. It would just be like right in the front, For Steve, I think that was easy. For me, it was not easy. So big adjustment, but it was lots of fun.
That's true. Steve Bauer was the principal behind that team. And as you mentioned, he had success in Europe. He knew the lay of the land. Were you guys based out of Kortrijk, or did you actually have like a European base when you went there?
Kind of a bit of a blur. We were a little overplaced, but the team really took care of us the first year. So the first year, if you didn't have your own place to stay, the team had a place for us to stay. And when we were near Carcassonne in the kind of south of France for a bit. And then when we were in Belgium, we'd be up in Kortrijk. There was a few guys, like Swain was already set up, and I think it was maybe Bagnolas at the time, and Will went and did his own place in Carcassonne area. And so some guys did their own thing, but I went through staying with the team. So I was kind of in that bubble together, which made things way easier than if I had to just figure out my own apartment for the first time. 2011 too, you think about how much technology has changed and how much easier it is to be in Europe right now than it was even then versus when Steve was doing it. It's crazy, it blows my mind.
What was it like getting into the European pelotons after, having raced in North America and knowing the North American scene? What was the bunch like in Europe for you? And also, what were the roads like for you?
You would start to get scarred, I think, in the races. Like, you would do a race and you'd be like, it would just blow apart. It'd go so ballistically fast at one point. And then the next year you'd do that race in 2012, the same team, would be like, oh, I remember this part. Like, this place is crazy. So they're kind of figuring out and learning the races, trying to learn as fast as possible. The first year was a massive learning curve. And there was like same thing, like you're out there with like these big riders that you kind of read about in the magazines or whatever it was. And I remember specifically too, there was one, and I ended up being teammates with them later, but it was Sylvain Chavanel was supporting Tom Boonen, and I think it might have been E3 or something, and he had a problem, and he came by me like just steamrolling by me, and I'm suffering. Like, probably I'm dropped at this point, and he's just got Boonen on his wheel. And then later on in my career, I ended up being teammates with him. So it was just eye-opening to see some of these guys and how strong they were and everything, and trying to adapt and figure it all out. But it was crazy.
At the end of 2012, SpiderTech shut down. That's the second team you're on that dissolved. But was the end of SpiderTech different than the end of Symmetrics?
Yeah, I would say so, because I was at Symmetrics. I was never really a part of it as long. Like, I came in the last year. It was really cool, but I guess that part was the writing was on the wall. We all knew all year long that was going to be the last year. Like, I was so young in my career, I didn't know what else I was missing out on or what was going to happen. I didn't really know the game at all. When SpiderTech news came, that was a lot harder, because I already was planning on staying in the team going forward, and it kind of happened pretty last minute. And I'd started to be like, well, geez, I really want to be racing in Europe. So that was, I kind of knew and had new goals and what I wanted to try to continue to do in my career. So that was definitely a way bigger shock than what was Symmetrics news.
In 2013, you were back on Kelly Benefit Strategies. It was now called Optum, presented by Kelly Benefit Strategies. To me, that 2013 season seems like your best in terms of results. You had a win at BC Super Week and 3 other podium finishes there. You were second at Nationals. You finished just behind Peter Sagan at a stage at the USA Pro Challenge. And you were also top Canadian at the Tour of Alberta. Does that year stand out for you, or is there another one that seems more significant?
I would say that was a pretty big year for me, in terms of that was when I really knew I still wanted to race, and I wanted to race at a high level. So I think for me, I was really happy to be back and have a place to race in Optum, but I wanted to be back racing in Europe. And I was obviously stronger from those 2 years of racing in Europe, but that was my focus. That was the only thing I had my mind on, was trying to get back to racing in a nice big team in Europe. And I didn't, nothing was going to kind of get in my focus in my way. That's what I was focused on doing. That's what I wanted to do. I trained really hard. I was focused on everything that you could imagine to try to be, I think when you're trying to do all the little things, I was doing every little thing I could do, constantly stretching, looking after my diet, training hard, resting. Like, I didn't have much of another part of my life. That was just, I wanted to get back to racing in Europe.
So that desire to race in Europe explains, I think, your next move. That was to the French pro-continental team Direct Energy in 2016. How did that opportunity come about?
There is some Canadian history in that team. Garneau used to be a sponsor within the team too, and my old teammate David Vailloux had raced there. And then at the current time, Antoine Duchesne was there at the time as well. So Antoine for sure helped. Big part of me getting into Direct Energy at that time. He spoke really highly of me to the owner, John Rene. And at that time, the team was going from what was Europe Car to Direct Energy. So I think, I owe definitely a lot to Antoine in that way of, kind of help talk them into taking a chance to bring me into the team as well. And I think some of my results in the past and some of the races I'd done well in Europe just kind of helped put it all together, and then it ended up going there on what started to be a 1-year deal, and I ended up going for 2 years.
You did mention that you had a fellow Canadian, Antoine Duchesne, on that team with you, but you were the only Anglophone on that squad. I think it was all French riders, you and Antoine Duchesne. How was that for you, the English speaker making his way on that very French squad?
Yeah, that was a challenge. I don't know what it was. I just, like, growing up in the West, I never learned. I never really was exposed to much French at all. First growing, I didn't like learn French at all, and so I genuinely was trying, but I wasn't picking it up very fast. So I definitely really struggled with the French. It got a bit better, but then same thing. Like, I was taking some classes and studying, and it was like, then you come back and it'd be like all this different slang, and it was just like I was lost. I was not picking it up. It was too fast for me, and so yeah, that was a struggle. But I just tried to make up for it, and being polite and respectful to everyone around me, and I tried to do the best job I could to make up for not really being able to speak French. And I could pick up a lot more. Like, I understood the racing, I understood what was going on. For the most part, it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out when we were at certain races who the leaders were and what we were trying to achieve. And there was people that spoke English in the team, but it was just very, it was primarily French. But if there was something really specific they didn't think I understood, we could speak English.
So then maybe it was more of a challenge at the team dinner table, but in the races themselves, you could get the job done with your teammates? Yeah,
I think so. You kind of have to ask them that too, but I think I did a pretty good job. And I mean, honestly, the information on the radio it's pretty basic, right, for the most part, and you start to figure it out. And I would say I got a lot better at reading the race book and understanding the race book and where key moments were in the race. So it actually probably helped me in a bit of my career in terms of being able to study the road book and watching previous editions of the race, and that part has gotten so much better and easier too, to have so much information at your fingertips in order to do recon on street views or whatever it is in races. So I think I was pretty well prepared for the races we were doing, and then listening in the radio, like I was saying, it's pretty basic information that you're getting, so it's kind of key moments, and then it's always consistently the same words, so you start to like that stuff I was able to pick up and adapt and work well with.
During your 2 years at Direct Energy, you raced most of the classics, including Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders, and one Grand Tour, the Vuelta a España. Those races, it's not very common for a Canadian who spent his career on continental and pro-continental teams. Was it luck or savviness that got you those opportunities? I guess, for a racer like Hugo Uhl, who you mentioned earlier, he's on a World Tour team. So you go to those races naturally. But if you're not on the Division 1, getting to those races is not always a sure thing, especially for a North American rider. So is it luck, or are you a wily race navigator genius?
Oh, I think it's a mix of both. I've had, plenty of luck in my career, but then there's, for Flanders, for instance, lots of guys want to do Flanders in the team too. It's a beautiful race. Roubaix is crazy. I think everyone wants to do maybe Roubaix once, but I'm not so sure everyone wants to do Roubaix every year. But yeah, Flanders, for instance, and my spot in the Grand Tour at the Vuelta, that was not easy to come by. I had to do lots of training, really hard, and fought for my spot. So there was not as much luck in that. A bit of luck, to be where in the situation I was even having the chance to fight to do a Grand Tour, but the Vuelta start was not handed to me.
I'm curious about what you said about Paris-Roubaix. Do riders think, oh, that's cool, it's the hell of the north, but then once they go through hell, they're less keen to return?
That's my experience. Yeah, I was slated in 2017. I was slated to do both Flanders and Roubaix again. And 3 days at Japan, though, I crashed and hit like a telephone pole, cracked my shoulder blade, so I didn't finish the rest of the classics that year. But Roubaix was not necessarily a race I was willing to. I wasn't like, my arm wasn't shooting up for the second return to go back to Roubaix. It's a brutal race. But guys love it, and they love it, and it's a cool experience, and I would never change not doing it, but it is crazy. Yeah, crazy, terrifying. And I was like, the night before, they were calling potentially for some rain. It was like, I don't know if that's like that every year, like maybe there's like 40% chance, but in 40% in Vancouver, like for sure it rains a bit. And I was just terrified. Yeah, I was like, no, there's no way that my first year there can be rain. We were on BH bikes that year, and they had a disc aero bike version, and we were riding on the caliper brakes all year. But for Roubaix, we were going to use the disc brakes for bigger tires and whatnot. But for the mechanics too, like this was pretty new technology as well. And the mechanic, I remember the poor guy, he was up like all night trying to figure out my bike because I don't have like massive hands, so I like the levers really pretty close to the bar and trying to figure out this new technology and get it all sorted out for me. So I was pretty nervous. I used it in Skelderprice on the Wednesday before Roubaix for the first time, and it did rain in Skelderprice. So I'm at the back a bit scared of like, Jesus, trying to figure out these brakes. The levers are pulling pretty far into the bar, and so the whole thing was just nervous, terrified. New bike, Roubaix, scared.
No kidding. And I forget that, discs were still new at the time. And I remember the uproar that a lot of riders were not happy with having disc brakes. And it makes sense when you tell your story, because you're used to a very specific behavior of your brakes in very specific situations where you need them to work precisely. And just, you don't try new stuff on race day. Like, that's the cliche, right? And yet it sounds like you were doing that.
Yeah, I mean, just riding on the road, the bike rode really nice. It was nice, but it's like a field sprint every time they go into one of those sectors. It's just crazy. So on a new bike, and yeah, I guess I'm very particular about having the brakes engage on both sides at the same moment. If the front one is hitting the rim earlier than the back, it drives me nuts. So, and I was already pretty tense and nervous about this race. So it was unique. That blew my mind too, how much work the staff has to do for a racer at Roubaix. All the bikes had different wheels and tires. Maybe the wheels were like the same, but all these new tires I had never even seen before were on like every bike, plus like so many spares. The inner chain rings, everything was like changed out, like a ton of work for one race. It's a crazy show.
You made it to Europe. It was your goal after you got your taste of European racing through Spider Tech. Did you ever miss anything in North America? Did you ever think, maybe North American racing's got this going on for it?
I liked racing in North America, and it was a lot of fun. But I think for me, if I wanted to race, I wanted to race, and I wanted to try to race the best guys I could race. If I was winning or not was one thing, but I just wanted to be like in the race. I'd rather be getting beaten constantly by the best guys. That was why I wanted to be in Europe. I felt like the best guys were they were racing in Europe in all these big races, and I wanted to experience what that was like and if I could do it.
Why did you move back to your old team, Rally Cycling, in 2018?
Probably a lot of reasons. They were going to go Division 2 to go to Europe. They had been going to Europe, but that was like the first push they were really going to do it. There was a lot of other things, like culturally, Direct Energy was difficult for me, and I had experienced these races now, so I was like, the rest of my social life within the team was going to be way easier at Rally. So that was probably the main reason, and I was quite curious to see where Rally was going to go and what was going to come of it, because I'd ridden for Charles. This was going to be my third time. Charles, the owner of Rally Cycling, the team, he was a great boss and a good guy to ride for, so I wanted to kind of go back and see what was going to happen there, because there was a lot of races that I wanted to do, Flanders Roubaix and a Grand Tour, and so I had done those, and I was pretty curious to see what it was going to be like at Rally. And in hindsight, it was kind of a pretty natural fit for me to go back there.
What's one of your most memorable races from the past 2 years?
I always love like the Tour de Suisse. We did Swiss last year that was the team's first, I think it was the first World Tour stage race the team has done in Europe. And it's just, I always think it's special. You go to Swiss and you're just on the bus with the guys after, and it's been a scarring day in the mountains, and you're kind of just sitting there laughing. It's just like how ridiculously hard that stage was, or what it was. And that part of, the culture of the team, and just sitting around on the bus afterwards with the guys laughing about, how ridiculous, and unless you're on the bike experiencing the day, we have short memories as cyclists. And I already forget how hard Roubaix was, even though I remember it like it was yesterday, but it was like the next one, and then you already forget about the next hard day. So anyways, those hard days stick out to me, and Swiss has plenty of hard days, so that was a highlight. And Swain and I were in the back of the bus every day, just kind of, that was our spot, and joking, and it was just, good memories.
Tell me about how you broke your leg last year and the effect that injury has had.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's definitely had a pretty big effect on me. It was kind of a freak accident. I was looking back, in a typical like road year, what is it? I'd typically spend like ride 20,000 K or something like this. And if I think about how many kilometers I've ridden and how many big accidents I've had, it's not that many if you think about it that way. So this was a pretty big freak accident, but it was really a pretty serious break. A lot of things went my way that day. I was mountain biking up from my house, but there's a lot of spots where it's like a dead zone. There's no service. And I'm like laying there in the woods and I can see my leg and the bone. And I'm just like, is this it? What is it like? Am I going to be on the North Shore search and rescue because I can't get service or whatever it was? And it happened to be a pretty nice fall day. It was like October 1st. And there happened to be a lot of people still out riding. So I was able somebody came across me pretty fast and everything worked out all right. But it was, I don't know, just mentally it was something that kind of changed me. And I still find myself really protecting the leg. So I just think in racing, that was never going to work out very well because you can't be going down a big descent in Europe trying to race and really being worried about your leg. I don't think it's going to work, in my opinion.
Right. And as a rider who has mixed it up in sprints, like those are chaotic and you need to be, I guess, fearless. And it sounds like, I don't know, we all age and we all tend to get a little more concerned about our health and our making sure we don't break bones. So is that like a switch that flipped for you then after that?
Yeah, for sure. I think like if you take five of me in different age groups, I'd be the first one to hit the brakes now. And that you just can't do that in Europe and trying to help or any, like just in racing in general, you're not going to be able to effectively help the team anymore if you're the first guy to kind of back out of the hole that may or may not have been there. And so I think frustratingly for me, that was something I was noticing last year, even before I broke my leg. I wasn't willing to try to push through those holes that may or may not have been there anymore. That was kind of how I built my career. And I'm happy with everything I was able to do.
Are you comfortable now with your new view of racing? And are you comfortable with the Ryan Anderson who is going to hit the brakes?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I had a really good run and I'm really happy with everything and all the moments that I was able to experience. And it is a crazy sport. Like you see it everywhere too. It's like more and more these traffic controlled zones are popping up in every village. But even here, like in Vancouver, I'll be driving through a neighborhood now. It's like we got these roundabouts I wish we never had before, all designed to slow down cars, but they're not good for bike racing. And so yeah, and I remember in Belgium I crashed and it was 3 days out of bed, and the ambulance guy was even talking to me about it. He's just like, yeah, building all these traffic controlled zones now, and yeah, it's not good for cycling. Yeah, it's definitely not good for cycling. But I'm really happy with what I was able to do and the risk that I took, and risk with the reward.
Some of the significant North American races that you did throughout your career are now gone. I'm thinking of the Tour of Alberta, Tour of California, the Philly Cycling Classic and its various incarnations, and the USA Pro Challenge. What does that say about the health of North American road racing?
I've heard someone say the other day it's like a dumpster fire, but it's not great right now. That's for sure. I feel for people because it's new. It's a new challenge to figure out what's going to happen. Those races had lots of great support. Like I have so many good memories of California, US Pro Challenge. And it's not like we don't need a ton of these big events in America. Just if we could get within Canada too, like thankfully Quebec, Montreal is a huge platform for with Sarge letting the national team go each year. It's a massive part of my career. And if they could just figure out how to get a couple of those big key races stable and come back, I think it makes a big change in terms of if you can make the jump from solely racing in North America to Europe, or if you have to try to go to Europe exclusively to try to make a road cycling career. I hope it gets a lot healthier. Like gravel cycling and events seem to be doing really well, but I don't know if you win a couple of Belgian waffle rides, you get a road contract. I don't know, but it's definitely a pretty hard way to navigate right now.
Is it harder, do you think, to make it as a road cyclist now than it was 13 years ago when you went pro?
I think it's different. I think I had unique challenges. And I think that somebody that's trying to do it right now has a lot of unique challenges. Like when I was starting Livestrong, that development team had just started, but now there's plenty of young development teams and lots of really, really good development teams. So that part, for instance, didn't really exist when I was trying to come up. But then there was way better racing in North America when I was coming up, and there was probably kind of tailing off, but more continental teams in North America than there is now. So it was just different, I would say.
So what's next for you in retirement from pro cycling?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I got lots of ideas. So I think Swain told me I'm an ideas man, but I need to execute some ideas. So I think kind of see what happens in the next bit. Being at home this year has definitely shown me that I'm really passionate about bikes and cycling, everything to do with cycling, mountain biking, cross, gravel, gear. I'm just really into all that. So I think if I was to say what type of industry I want to stay into is cycling, but what that's going to look like, I really don't know yet. This whole thing of just since I decided I was going to stop racing, it's been amazing how many people have reached out to me, and I feel very fortunate. I think a lot of it had to do with, how I carried myself throughout my career, but lots of people have reached out to me and been willing to help me and give me advice and kind of show me like, well, no, this is, you're going to need to go this way or do that. And yeah, it's just been amazing. So I'm going to continue to lean on all these people that, have either already done this themselves or have been in the industry for years. The resources of people that are willing to give me advice and guidance on kind of like life outside of cycling is it's very valuable to me.
Well, Ryan, thank you for your time and good luck with whatever the next steps are in your career. Thanks again.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And that's the episode. It's written and edited by me, Matthew Piero. I had help from web editors Terry McCall and Lily Hansen-Gillis. The podcast is produced by Adam Killick. He composed the music too. Thanks to Ontario Creates for its support. And thank you for listening. Please rate and review the show, ride safely, and I'll talk to you later.